Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. All right, people. Let me just check that we are live. I'm just going to, 1 second, get all this here. Just move this out the way. All right, just bring up the voice chat and just check that the audio is coming through. Those of you tuning in, if you can hear me loud, almost switched it off there. All right, who do we have? All right, shukran, Scorpio. All right, ahlan wa sahlan. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Inna alhamdulillahi wa kafah. والصلاة والسلام على رسوله المصطفى وعلى عباده الذين ارتضى ومن بهداهم اهتدى وبآثار أهل المدينة اقتفى وبعد فالسلام الله على القوم أهلا وسهلا ومرحبا بكم. Right, shukran, people, shukran. You know, I was supposed to be doing a live stream yesterday, and as it goes, there's always something that turns up, and I just couldn't get it done. And I thought, so next week it is. But then I thought, yaar, Moka bhi hai, dustur bhi hai, in the words of the poet. Well, the opportunity is right here. And really what I wanted to speak about, part of the whole, this inconquerable spirit, the indomitable spirit of humankind, there was a relevance and with this week historically, and so that made it interesting. But right, first of all, those of you tuning in, clicking like, share, clicking like and share as well, spread the love, people. Let me see who we have here. Lucy Jones, alaikum assalam, ahlan wa sahlan. Scorpio, you're doing it. Shamrose Khan, all right, I'm good. Shukran. Nora, as always, inshallah, tasharrafna. Salam, Mufti, you are a G. Kya baat hai? Kya baat hai, huh? Suleiman Fauzi, Allah, assalamu alaikum, Mufti from Malaysia. Doing it. Imran, all right, from NYC. Al Murabitun, shukran. How are you, my new management team? Who's my new management team? Right, I'm meeting my future father-in-law for the first time. Look at this, straight away jumping into an issue at hand. Right, now that I've read it out, come on then, yeah. Let's... Aftab, hey, I'm meeting my father-in-law for the first time. Any words of advice? Well, I think I'll just open it up to the public, really. Whatever people are feeling, share the advice. Is it just, it's all downhill from here, I take it? Oh, I'm sure you'll do great. Aftab, huh? The sun. Vah, Ash-Shams. Aftab. So just tell them that you will be a light as bright as the sun in their lives to serve them. Huh? That's what the sun does, is it breathes life, it provides warmth. Kya baat hai, huh? It brings light to us. Otherwise, without it, we'd all be in darkness. There you go. Ab isse badh ke kya? What more can one say? That's Aftab, have an Uber on hold just in case. contingency plans. So this is, it is true. This is, but I've got contingencies. DEFCON 2, DEFCON 3, DEFCON. Ya salam, ya salam. Let's see. Right. Kiss your father-in-law on the forehead. Well, with that one, that is a good one, but with it, just make sure the timing is right. Okay, you move in to kiss him on the forehead, he suddenly moves. And through the miscommunication, there is a new connection. And just with that connection, the other guests walk in. And from this connection, there's confusion. That, yeah, and then before you know it, the father-in-law is trying to convince the family that you should be brought in to the fold. They're like, yeah, the father-in-law seems to be too convincing. It's almost a conflict of interest now. Ya salam. Huh? Well, there you go. See, we resolved it all right there for Aftab. What you can do is send him this clip. Send him this clip of meaning with MALM, the beginning. That should hopefully set the mood. Right. So, somebody miss a as always, shukran, refeed, Johnstone, much love for the super chat. Let me bring it. It's not. Why is it not letting it bring it up? Wait there, 1 second. Right, there it is. A couple of weeks ago, I asked a question about Hajj, which you've answered. However, you did say Arafat. Well, that's for another time. Can today be that time? Al Arafah has a set time in the calendar. We can't be flipping these dates around and causing. I don't know if today's that day, because we've got a bit of some topics to already cover, and as it goes, there's always some questions here and there. But we will come to Arafah. I'm trying to also recall in what context I spoke of Arafah when I said that, because there could be many things, but when I said it, there must have been something specific that I was more eager to speak about. Right now, Hussein Burban, I don't like the beard. Hi. And hairstyle, Mufti, I don't like. No me gusta. Kya baat hai, Hussein ji. If you'd told me before, I would have shaved it all off. You see, Hussein, this is where we have to break the unfortunate news to you that this is going to come as a great surprise. So brace yourself. But that nobody's doing anything for your sake. This is going to come as a surprise that you're unfortunately not the main character in this. So but I appreciate the comment and the feedback. It's so distracting. Distraction, man. Distraction. All right. Wow, shukran. We've got Shifayat Chaudhry Saab Chaudhry ji. Assalamu alaikum, brother. Looking smart and well groomed as usual, along with Allah bless you. Allah bless you. Right. So, we have to share a few words on the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. Liz has finally kicked the bucket, people. She has decided to, I say decided, not like it was in her control. But yeah, I think it's first and foremost, her passing is it's a reminder that no matter what resources, what wealth, what science, technology, and just human advancements that anybody has, and unquestionably, she had the best resources at her disposal that any possible human being could have had. I mean, she's from the elite, few select individuals in the world that every single person on earth knows about, and who just enjoys an unfathomable amount of wealth that truly I doubt anybody knows the amount of wealth that she truly had access to. So despite that, this dunya is ephemeral, transient, and passing. That kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. It does not matter whether you are from the lower strata of society or from the elite, royal, ruling class. Everyone and each and all will at some day have the final curtain drawn for them. And that's a very powerful reminder. So, yeah, one thing for sure, money definitely kept her in very good health. I mean, she looked phenomenally great for her age. And if you just think about how much she's witnessed, I mean, she's from the aftermath of World War One and living till now. Wow. You know, one thing for sure, I feel King Charles, King, long live the King, King Charles the Third, rather. He, I think, must have thought, Ya salam, my dua finally has come true. He must have thought, Ya Rab, I've been making dua for decades. Finally, waqtul istijaba, and my dua gets accepted. Man, he has ascended. He's come to the throne at what, 73 or something, and I think the Queen looked in better health than him. As Bechara, I don't know what's going on with his fingers. Those things are just, I don't know what that condition is, but he's obviously got the best medical advancements at his disposal, and yet still he's got these super hyper swollen fingers. And yeah, but I mean, people say he is more sympathetic to Islam, and he may be. I feel that he definitely is more sympathetic to Islam and Muslims than the Queen was. Definitely. You see, the thing about the Queen is, I think the Queen, she clearly had a presence to her. And you can understand that. I watched a clip by Jordan Peterson speaking about the Queen having passed, and he made some incredibly valuable points. That, you see, there was this symbolism of authority, and that she would have unquestionably just wielded and just had. You see, for many people that don't know, every Monday before, as the first course of action for the Prime Minister, they have to take a trip to Buckingham Palace and report the weekly affairs and the plans for that week to the Queen in a royal audience every week without fail, every Monday morning. And the woman you're talking to has been alive since your own perhaps grandfather was, and this woman has witnessed World War II, and she's witnessed over a dozen prime ministers come and go, or 13, or this being the 14th now. So with Liz Truss getting her royal audience, and then the Queen dies. You know, but that must be so daunting, having to turn up and wow, people would be, I mean, you can imagine the kind of, just what kind of a harrowing experience that must be. So yeah, now the Queen was this, now looking at her, she's like there's this appearance of this cute old lady, like a cute grandma kind of manifestation. But I don't think she, by any stretch, was a kind of sweet, quiet old lady. On the contrary, I believe that she was incredibly stern and very powerful, not just powerful as the Queen, but as a personality. She was a formidable force. I don't think she, by any stretch, was, like this sweet old lady, like a grandma that just, by looking at her, you have this image, like she looks so sweet and looks so like a cute old lady, and who's probably, and people picture these things, but I think she was incredibly stern, strict, ridiculously kind of religious about her protocol, and ambitiously held on to the throne. So, and she had the other royals under lock. I mean, and most likely she had Princess Diana killed. I mean, this is the same. This is the same Royal Highness, and yeah, and you have to remember, she's from an era where the world was so different. And do people really change if the bulk of their formative years have passed in that era? So I think people can change so long as, but imagine reaching 60 years of age, or 50, going past 50 years of age, and the world is still so backwards in so many things. I mean, we're looking at the 80s, and so racism wasn't even illegal in the UK. So I mean, that was brought in in 1988. So you can see that this woman is from this era where you weren't, if she was giving a speech, you weren't allowed in pubs or these things to listen to the speech whilst eating anything, drinking anything. You had to stop. There was a whole religious protocol, which the military and those people take very seriously. I mean, it's not, I know people, the public are airy-fairy, but the Queen and these people. So yeah, that's my thoughts on her. I think, sure, people say she did a lot of good things and was this figure of this symbolic figure for, and sure, I accept all of these things. I do also think that, look, really, she had witnessed incredible oppression at the hands of the British. And even in a diplomatic way, because one could say, well, nobody wants to assume responsibility. But even in a diplomatic, and remember, she could have it looked over 10 times over before giving such a speech or issuing such a statement. She could have, to some extent, said something, done something about these atrocities that were carried out. Because it's in her lifetime that she witnessed the world suffering at the hands of the British. I mean, every 6 days, I believe it is, that a country in the world celebrates its independence from the British Empire. I mean, just think about that. Every 6 days. So every week, a country, and more than almost every week, a country is celebrating its independence from what was a barbaric rule of tyranny. So yeah, and I get that. People say, well, how far back do reparations go, and how far back does apologies go? But they could be something in some sense, but there wasn't. And we saw what happened with Harry and Meghan. And Harry has this interview. I did share it. I don't really use Twitter, but somebody sent me a Twitter link and it was on there. So I shared it, retweeted it. And it's like a mind-blowing interview that he gives. Really, it's just shocking that he's just speaking his reality, just nothing but just sheer reality to the camera. And he's speaking about the racism, the kind of the catastrophic stress levels that him and Meghan were facing, the fact that the family people were either making her life a misery, making his life a misery, to the extent that he felt she would either kill herself or they would kill her. And the Queen making these statements about the color of their children's skin and things like this, and because she's from that era, you can't forget that she's from that era. So and he mentions in the interview, he says that I saw all of this happening with my mother, and he says, and it's no, people forget that he says about his mother that when she was in a relationship with a person of color, that she was driven to her death. And you could see history was about to repeat itself. So yeah, these are the things. That said, some observations on the Queen. I feel that really she did, as far as being a queen, a monarch goes, she pulled off an incredible task. Incredible. I mean, you see, to be the queen or to be the monarch, she muted herself. And that is next to impossible. It was, each and every one of us wants a voice. We want to share an opinion, even if we don't want to be controversial or political, or we want to have an opinion. Oh, I like that flavored drink. Oh, I think this is beautiful scenery. Oh, I love this movie. Oh, I like that music. People just want to, this bayan, which we spoke of in last session, they want to just express themselves as a person to whoever, even if they've just got 3 people listening, or if they've got the world. They want to be heard. And what she did was, at the cost of the monarchy, she silenced her voice. And she did it incredibly well. I mean, I don't think any monarch could have pulled it off the way she did. She, did not give statements, did not give ideas, opinions, likes, dislikes. Occasionally, maybe something kind of crept out, but no. And being one of the most hyper successful or hyper famous people throughout the world, yet to remain silent for decades, not for days. If somebody said that, just stop going on social media, or you can go on social media, but you can only just spectate. You can't participate, you can't like anything, you can't comment. And you must do this for, not you must, you can do this for 10 days. You must live in the shadows. That would seem like, whoa. And doing that for decades, really, in many ways, and living a life that if you step out of protocol, you would be immediately scrutinized. That life, to me, with that extent of everybody may have some exposure to some scrutiny, but to that extent that you can't do anything, it's not worth the jewels and the gold and the wealth and the royalty that it brings with it. To me, as a person, to become silenced and just be a monument for the rest of your natural existence on this earth. Wow. But for us, that's to observe that, it's like, wow, okay, this is an interesting observation. So yeah, those were my thoughts. I've seen some Muslims. I saw this thing, making, I think, wanting to pray her janaza, or people holding Friday congregation prayers for her death. And I think, in all honesty, I think the Queen would have would have like brought these people back into their common sense if she was given an opportunity. I think she would be insulted, or she wouldn't be insulted, but she would find it absurd. I mean, maybe she wouldn't say that publicly because of who she was. She did not express opinions. But I don't think that's what she was after, and I don't think it's really the thing that, sure, people are sentimental, and they have a sentiment, and that in its own place is incredibly valuable. But it doesn't mean you have to. I saw this article saying, oh my God, we can see the Queen. This was, I think, some of the British folks saying, could see the Queen in the clouds. Oh my God, there's a picture of her in the clouds. Karamate Olia. وَلِلنَّاسِ فِيمَا يَعْشَقُونَ مَذَاهِبُ. So people, this is so. And there was this person in this article, this viral photograph, where he was doing Umrah on behalf of Queen Elizabeth, and he's holding up this placard, and it says, he's doing Umrah on behalf of Elizabeth G. So naturally, he got arrested. So I guess that Umrah never got accepted. The heart has a way of its own, huh? The love, the connection. So yeah, that said, people, we should always see in death a reminder, and we should avoid ever being, where humanly possible, being rude or abusive to a death. Okay, that is not the way of Islam or the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right, moving on. Right, so we've got some. Yeah, King loves Quran. Right, so Nora, sausage fingers, that's of King Charles now. King Charles. Rather. Well, people, that's the legacy. A royal fun fact that not Queen Elizabeth II, who's just gone, but Queen Elizabeth I, I'll have you know, was the first monarch on earth to sit and experience a flush toilet. That's actually a true fact for those of you that don't know that. But now you may do with that information what you will. That there was a he was like a plumber and I don't know, I guess somebody with a curious mind, and his name was actually Thomas Crapper. So the English word crap actually is dedicated to his name. So Thomas Crapper G, he invented the flush system on the toilet. And then obviously the royal monarch, Queen Elizabeth I, got to test it out. And there you go. And Queen Elizabeth II got to enjoy all the fruits that came by flushing on the Commonwealth states and bringing in their golden resources. Right, people, let's move on. I wanted to speak today about I'm sure I brought up, let's see, I should have some poems here actually. So Allahu Akbar. I want to speak about the indomitable human spirit, some Quranic guidance, but also hieroglyphs, triumph and selective amnesia. Now, why hieroglyphs? Well, because one, it is a great example, a great case study of the indomitable human spirit to conquer the inconquerable, to think the unthinkable, to decipher the apparently indecipherable. And also, this will on the 14th of September, but not in 2022, but in 1822, is when the hieroglyphics were deciphered. Allah. So, what a theme. Why not speak a bit about this? But I wanted to highlight just a bit of an overview of what went on. How did people, who were the key people? Champollion and others, and we're going to look at that, but also the selective amnesia that has taken place when it came to hieroglyphics and the Muslim contribution. So that's something I want to just share a few words on. Claire said, a week before my birthday. Well, happy birthday in advance, and may Allah bless you and many, many happy returns to come. Right, so all right, I'm just trying to see what that. Okay, so right, taking a look at some poems to freshen. Kya baat hai, huh? Right, so wow. People हौसले जिंदगी के देखते हैं, चले कुछ देर जी के च, चलिए कुछ देर जी के देखते हैं. That hosle zindagi ke, that the courage of life, let's see it, let's see what it's about. That chaliye kuch der ji ke dekhte, that keep walking, my dear, for a little while. Let's see what it's about. This is once again that human spirit, that नींद पिछली सदी से जख्मी है, ख्वाब अगली सदी के देखते. Wow, the expression and the metaphor that is brought in here, that neend pichli sadi se zakhmi, that our sleep remains perturbed and disturbed from last century, I guess tying into the whole colonial thing as well. Khab, yet our dreams, agli sadi ke dekhte. Yet we dream, our dreams are nested in the coming century. That although what he's saying is, although disturbed by an unnerved or an unnerving past, yet in many ways we remain optimistic. Now, one could argue this is also saying delusional, but I would like to see it more as being said in an optimistic way. ख्वाब अगली सदी के देखते हैं. Right. So this is all to cap up the human spirit. Here, people, कुछ सफरे ज़ीस्त भी लंबा था, कुछ हम भी थोड़ा सुस्त चले. You gotta love it, people. You gotta love it. Right. So all right, people. I don't know what happened there. I take it's back. Let me just check in case there's an issue with. Can you guys hear me, see me? Let me just check here. Right, so right, it's back, yeah? Okay, it's back. Shukran. I have no idea. It's all right. I don't know. I guess it must be the internet. I'll have to check with the companies, what they're playing at. So, right. So, people, let's bring that back to where we were. That कुछ सफर ज़ीस्त भी लंबा था, कुछ हम भी थोड़ा सुस्त चले. That now here he's explaining, or she's explaining, whatever the challenges of life were, but almost giving it 50-50. That in part, the journey of life was quite long. And in part, we too were at times lazy. कुछ हम भी अपने दुश्मन थे, कुछ दुश्मन हमको बहुत मिले. In part, we were our own enemies, and in part, the adversaries we received were quite a few as well. So the person's putting it 50-50. कुछ हम मंजिल को भूल गए, कुछ रास्ते हमको सख्त मिले. That in part we forgot at times the destination. That said, the paths that we found ourselves upon were also quite difficult. Allah. But it just shows that human spirit, huh? कुछ सफरे ज़ीस्त भी लंबा था, कुछ हम भी थोड़ा सुस्त चले. कुछ हम भी अपने दुश्मन थे, कुछ दुश्मन हमको बहुत मिले, कुछ हम मंजिल को भूल गए, कुछ रास्ते हमको सख्त मिले. Very powerful. So, and this is a classic of that human spirit, that कश्तियां सबकी किनारे पे पहुंच जाती हैं, ना खुदा जिनका नहीं उनका खुदा होता है. Wow. That is just wow. You see, he says in the end, everybody's boats reach the shore because the waves ultimately carry them there. Na khuda in Farsi and in classical Urdu was used to refer to the mallah, the kind of sailor or the boatsman. They call it na khuda, and in Urdu poetry there would often be a play on words with the na khuda and na khuda, and because you see, in a way, you're almost saying no God, na khuda, and you've got the na khuda, who is the boatsman, and they would contrast relying the motif, the trope of relying on a boatsman on his mercy and skill to salvage the situation and save your life. Contrast that with relying on God. So na khuda jinka nahi, that those people who don't even have a boatsman and they're in a boat in the, in the middle of the sea, that unka khuda hota hai, that they, even if they don't have a boatsman, they still have a God. Just telling people that, look, no matter what the dire circumstances, God will always watch over you. And this is a classic which we've gone over many times before by Jigar Muradabadi. हमको मिटा सके ये जमाने में दम नहीं, हमसे जमाना खुद है, जमाने से हमने. Wow. Epic. That just, wow, it just brings up the entire, really riles the human spirit. That हमको मिटा सके ये जमाने में दम नहीं, that the era, the age, the world does not have within it what could extinguish us, what could annihilate us. Humse zamana khud hai, that the age, the era, the world is set by us. This is what the poet is saying, that हमसे zamana khud hai, zamane se humne. That the world exists, or not exists, but it is by us. This is the might of the indomitable spirit. One may say delusions of grandeur, but why not? Why not? So, I think right. Okay, so I don't know what that question is about. Right. So, Azarati, shukran, yaar, much love for the super sticker. Right. Now, coming to the theme today, the indomitable spirit. Now, a great instantiation of this, just an epic example that's highlighting and reflecting this majestic grandeur in the Quran is with the story of Adam alayhi salam. So let's bring that up. And okay. So yeah, so that's we'll be taking a look at from Surah Al-Baqarah from verse 30 to 33. These three verses, and just trying to see the just the kind of maybe the fresh perspectives that these verses can bring, and the meaning that they can add to the meaning that they can add to our daily lives and our connection with the Quran, and by extension our understanding of Islam. So أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now verse 30, you've got وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَنْ يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُ. And when your Lord said to the angels that I am placing within this earth a Khalifa, they said, in what appears to be almost an objection or a criticism towards mankind or humankind, قالوا أتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها, do you just place on this earth a species that will just spread harm and corruption? And by corruption, as in just spreading harm and hurt. وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاء, and they will shed blood. Whereas we, these beings, we simply glorify your praise. That's what we do. And Allah said, Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. That surely I have knowledge of that which you do not know. This is incredibly fascinating because, first of all, it's discussing the advent of insan on earth through Adam. Now, one way of looking at this, and this is the amazing thing, that every time you look at the Quran with fresh eyes, it gives you a fresh perspective. That Allah is saying, Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa, because it was always about the earth. It was always going to be in the earth. And this is the view of many Muslim scholars as well, that this Garden of Eden, or this garden, the Jannah to Adam, was fil ard. It was something on earth. It's not a heavenly entity. So, and that's also Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyah. Many people are surprised to hear that. Right. So, and here you can see it in the verse that Inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifa. That this is the purpose of Adam and Insan, that they will be in earth. Now, what is a Khalifa? Now, what many people have understood is a Khalifa is a deputy or a kind of steward, a caretaker of the earth, as though they take care of the earth on behalf of God. I'm sure that's a way that many people have interpreted this word. Linguistically, Khalifa in Arabic comes from the word khalf, to come behind or after something in succession, that you come after it. So there's things before you and you come after them. Khalifa. Now, by this perspective, Adam was coming after a series of other hominins before him. From, you've got Australopithecus to Homo erectus to Homo augusta to Homo habilis to Homo heidelbergensis to Homo neanderthals to Denisovans to you've got a whole series of these hominins that in many ways, some more than others, look very similar to this insan. Can't really tell much of a difference. I mean, sure, they might have a subtle brow difference. Their brow protrudes slightly. Otherwise, what is the difference? If somebody sees them, they're sure, they don't look that different. So this objection, this criticism, because the other hominins, what was special about them? I mean, they were special. They were intelligent, obviously not as intelligent as Homo sapien, but intelligent still, far more intelligent than primates and chimpanzees and gorillas and and chimps are pretty intelligent. So if you just go onto YouTube and watch how chimps are taught words, how they use tools, problem solving, when they put famous experiments where they put chimpanzees in a room and there's some bananas hanging, but they can't reach them because they can't seem to leap high enough. But then in the room are tools. And they see that would the chimp make adequate and appropriate use of certain tools and structure it together to reach, and they would, and they exceed in that small children. So they probably exceed they exceed the intelligence of a 2-year-old human being, arguably a 3-year-old even. And 3-year-old kids are pretty intelligent in their own way. And this is chimpanzees. We're talking about Neanderthals who were from the human race. So then, going to be far more intelligent. Now, yet there was something, and all these hominins did was, it was a kind of dignified animality, if we want to call it dignified, or it wasn't really dignified, but it was just a higher layer, higher strata of animal existence. They just lived like animals. They didn't really, there was no true sophistication at a cultural sense. And so here is Adam, who comes at the end. But there's nothing, you're looking at Adam, looking at Neanderthals, and Adam, in this understanding, is to be the father of the cognitive revolution, the one who receives consciousness as we have it. And all of us today are the children of Adam. Now, the next verse, Allah says, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا ثم عرضهم على الملائكة فقال أنبئوني بأسماء هؤلاء إن كنتم صادقين قالوا سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. So it says Allah taught Adam the names of things. And it's been said that if you can name something, you can know it. That's a discussion for another day, that when something rises in human consciousness, that we have names for it, and even movements, and even things that we see, once there's a name, it becomes a thing. Like, as in, I don't just mean a thing as an entity thing, but a thing, like we make a thing out of it. So it's interesting when words don't exist to explain something. It's as if people haven't truly caught on to that concept yet. So, and you have this difficulty, by the way, when speaking of certain topics, like even today, speaking of consciousness in some languages is a very difficult concept, because it's as though that it's not that they don't have a word, but that word hasn't been developed the way consciousness has in English. So when you're speaking about it, people they don't, it's like they miss the trees for the wood, and it doesn't make quite the same conversation in society. So even just looking at Urdu, for example, that speaking of consciousness, or even Arabic is catching up with this discussion of consciousness, but it's like, well, okay, how does that work? You see, because when you don't have words for something, and it's not that they don't have a word, like you could place a word like shu'ur. Now, shu'ur or wa'i, maybe a better one. In Arabic, in Urdu, okay, maybe shu'ur, you'll go with shu'ur, but then you see, shu'ur, it's also like it's an awareness. So does it really tap into the discussion on consciousness with a capital C? So it's like you'll have to explain a whole sentence or a paragraph to say what you're trying to say. Similarly, like the discussion on ethics. Now, ethics is also a word that has now developed, and when we translate it, it doesn't quite have the same effect, because people often translate these things as akhlaq, and that's a terrible discussion, because you see, akhlaq is a loaded term, and it's often to do with good character and conduct. And if you see, so for example, the discussion that do ethics evolve and change with the day and age? Now, if you translated that to akhlaq and said, do akhlaq change with the day and age? That sounds horrible, because it sounds like you're saying, does character of human beings, which is understood to mean good character, change? So the understanding, the kind of subliminal, the subtext is understood to mean that you're saying, does good character, should it change? And if it's going to change from good, what is it going to change to? It's going to obviously change to bad, because it's already good. So you're lost in translation when you use the word ethics or morals, because people, sure, maybe you could use qiyam in Arabic, but qiyam is then values. So, and maybe you see, once again, it taints the discourse, because once you say, do values change? People say, well, but values are good values. And so, and especially the qiyam of something, because it comes in Arabic from something that is worth something. And you're saying, oh, does that change? And so it's like leaves a, so you can see that why it's been said to name something is to know it. So علم آدم الأسماء كلها. And then here the Quran highlights this, illustrates to us, narrativizes this incident to instantiate this message, that the angels are asked, can you name these things? And they say, لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت, that we have no knowledge except what you taught us. إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. You are the one most knowledgeable, most wise. Now, قال يا آدم أنبئهم بأسماء هؤلاء فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم. That, you see, now here Allah is saying that we said to Adam that Ya Adam أنبئهم بأسمائهم. Sorry, not أسماء هؤلاء, بأسمائهم. That express the names of these things. فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم. When Adam expresses these names, قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض وأعلم ما تبدون وما كنتم تكتمون. that when he expresses them, Allah says, did I not tell you that I know that which is hidden to the heavens, to the earth, and to existence? I know it. وَأَعْلَمُ مَا تُبْتُونَ وَمَا كُنْتُمْ تَكْتُمُونَ. And I am aware of that which you manifest and that which you conceal. Now, the interesting thing here, what is it that Allah is teaching Adam? And in part, in other verses, Allah mentions that we breathed into Adam from our spirit. This ruhina, this ruh. This ruh is a synonym for consciousness. Adam received consciousness, and that's in the other verses. With this consciousness, we are told that he comes to learn the names of things, and to name something is to know it. But it doesn't stop here. That's not the mesmerizing thing, because you see, if we take it with just that understanding, then the verses, the angels, when they are asked that tell us that when Allah says to the angels that, look, anbi'uni bi asma'i haula'i, that express the names of these things, they say, la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. See, now this is they're saying that, well, obviously you've not taught us, so how do we know? And when Allah is saying to Adam that anbi'hum, that قلنا يا آدم أنبئهم بأسمائهم فلما أنبأهم بأسمائهم. So Allah tells Adam, you tell them, express this, and Adam expresses it. قال ألم أقل لكم إني أعلم غيب السماوات والأرض. You see, now let's just pause this for a moment and analyze. So here's the thing. If Allah is saying to the angels, tell me about these things, this is the, express these things to me, but begins by saying, وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. So Allah teaches Adam the names, let's say, and then says to the angels, you tell me the names of these things. They say that, but you haven't told us. And then Allah says to Adam, tell them, and then Adam tells them. Now, this is, in many ways, this is just stating the obvious. That's like I say to you, I say to someone, look, I mean, this, as an example, one could say, that's like saying, well, I want you to guess the number that I'm thinking. It's between 1 and 1,000. Tell me what number I'm thinking. And then I say to this person, here's the number. The number is 256. Okay, so now I ask this. Now, they haven't got a clue what number I'm thinking. Sure, they could take one random guess. Overwhelming likelihood is they're going to get it wrong. Overwhelming likelihood. They'll get it wrong. Probability is just so far out. So, and then I say, okay, so you got it. So let's say they say 728. And that's it. You're not even close. Okay, you say, what number am I thinking? And the person says, well, 256. Now, there's nothing special in that, because I told them. I told this person. So, of course, he's going to get it right. So, you see, this verse is not really, that's a very simplistic way of looking at this verse. This verse is speaking about something much more majestic than that. You see, that would have been understood. Of course, Adam is going to know this if he's taught this. What Adam was being given was not just this power of expression to name things and therefore know them. But with this newly found consciousness, this information or this knowledge, this knowing, was less about data and more about a skill set. That Adam would be able to put these fundamental blocks together and construct new knowledge, and then put that together and construct further new knowledge. That you have almost this dialectic, that you put this together and it gets its, it will have its result, which you can then bolt on to something else, and it has its construct result, and you continue to do this. You construct knowledge. You're not just simply reiterating. See, that's very low level. Animals can reiterate stuff. You can teach an animal, you can teach chimpanzees, you can teach crows, you can teach a dog, you can teach many animals to just simply know something. But to construct knowledge, that is a reflection of the true human spirit. By knowledge, I mean know-how as well. To be able to put things together and then stand on the blocks of that and construct further and keep going until you reach unprecedented, unfathomable heights. That we today have reached such heights that we can look into the cosmos and see as it were, almost as though it were in front of us, time emanating from its very inception, the Big Bang. Right from the cosmos, from that what appears to be infinitely impossible to attain, we see that right to the infinitesimal, into the atom and subatomic structures, and understand the reality of the fundamental building blocks of existence. How have we arrived at this? Except by that inconquerable spirit. And we continue to build on the backs of each other. So somebody learns something, we convey it. The next generation, they pick up that baton and they convey it and they add to it and they keep conveying, and people keep failing. They hit they hit a wall, a dead end. And they keep on trying. They keep on trying. They keep on. This is that indomitable spirit. This is where Allah is saying that, you say, I see something that just sheds blood and it just spreads mischief on the earth. There's something so special about this creature. Inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. There is a spirit that abides and that lives within this creature, that can move mountains. It can come to know the unknown and see the unseen. It's amazing where insan has reached in our times. Just seeing the stuff, how we're getting in real time clearer pictures of the cosmos. The new James Webb telescope that was just launched. We've got new breakthroughs in physics, in chemistry, in atomic knowledge, in technology, in medicine, in biology, breakthrough in understanding humans as a species, in understanding creatures, I mean, if you just look at the last few years, which we've all witnessed, and how humans have leaped, that is a testimony to what is being echoed in this verse of Surah Baqarah. That inni a'lamu ma la ta'lamu. That what you see is this human that isn't perceptibly, palpably so great. He's not the most fierce of animals on earth. He's not the weakest. He's by no stretch the strongest. Yeah, he's got some or defense to them. But then again, have we? A simple chimpanzee, one chimpanzee, could destroy a group of men. Destroy, I mean, absolutely could. If it came to it, could rip human arms out. That's how people underestimate how powerfully strong chimpanzees are. So strong. And people also often are unaware that a chimpanzee's bite with its jaw can actually crush a bone. They often don't exercise their full strength when fighting with the in-group, with members of the same tribe. But when they fight members of the other tribe, it's ridiculous what they'll do. They will wreak havoc on them. And that's a chimp, which when people look at chimp, chimpanzee is so cute. So humans, when you look at us, but within us, and in many ways, this is why the spirit, the ruh, the consciousness within us, in the Quran, it's been metaphorically associated with God. That when Allah says we breathed our ruh into Adam, it's metaphor, but it's to show the mind-blowing power, the majesty, the sanctity, the charm of this spirit. Allah, that each and every one of us has flowing, thriving right within us. And these spirits, these souls, these arwah are connected with one another. Al-arwahu junudun mujannada. There is this kind of connect. So when we look at, sometimes, there's a famous saying that you don't look at, that when faced with difficulties or challenges, it's not the size of the person that you see this giant of a man, or this strong. Sure, you could see somebody perceptibly, palpably weak, small, scrawny. You could see that. It's been said that don't look at the man in the fight, but the fight in the man. It's been said about the dog as well, I know, but the point is that what is it that makes it different? Bodies, but in fact, a stronger body here, a weaker body there. Viktor Frankl wrote about that it wasn't the survivors of the Holocaust weren't the most strongest and healthiest and most muscular and those who were not killed off but survived right through, because many people, their death, sure, it was by being killed, but those who weren't, that they died their own death, often died by the death of their spirit. That Viktor Frankl explains that it's that this whole message that if a person has a big enough why, to survive, that they can almost survive anyhow that comes their way. And what is that? What is it that gave the people this? It's the spirit within us. It is the ruh, the kind of almost this metaphoric electricity within us that keeps us alive, that keeps us thriving. It's not, should not be mistaken with the simple flesh and bones that we are and carry. These may be weak, but the spirit, the soul, Allah. As Jigar Muradabadi said, that हमको मिटा सके ये जमाने में दम नहीं, खुद हमसे है जमाना, जमाने से हम. That this is the indomitable spirit that each and every one of us carries within us. And I feel that this verse, these verses from 30 to 33 in Surah Al-Baqarah, with Adam arriving, this scene being set, that they on earth will now be a different species, that they will be something so spectacular that it's unimaginable. It is paving the way for insan, Adam, and then his offspring, all of us till this very day. I mean, if you think about it, that's not so common sense. That if you go around the globe and everybody looking so different from, you could go from Far Eastern China to Sub-Saharan Africa to Northern Europe, to you could go right, the diversity. It's not obvious necessarily that we are all related. I'm saying historically, for people to assume that we are all from one origin. And yet this is what scripture had taught, that you are that from one origin. So yeah, that's a reminder, and may Allah enable us to always find inspiration in the verses of the Quran, and to allow these to add meaning to our daily lives. Ameen. So I want to share that with you guys. So shukran. Right, I'll take a look at some of your comments and move on to naming, as in labeling, categorizing. I think, sure, but it's much bigger than that. Adam is a myth based on the Babylonian Sumerian myth of the first human, the Adamu. If you believe so, but obviously to us, we don't believe that. We know that there is you see, right, okay, so there is a chromosomal Adam, scientifically, that there was a point where Homo sapiens became Homo sapiens. The first person that did that, he is referred to as, for the Y chromosome, that was Adam. I mean, they just call him Adam in science, but there was that one person that began it. It is true that we today, this is not a myth, we today, all the humans on earth, trace our origin back to a single man. All of us on earth today, that is not a myth, that's science. So, has this fallen so far from the, that you claim? Another understanding that human consciousness within Homo sapiens began with an individual. It began somewhere. Did it not? It began with someone. Everybody accepts that. Science accepts it. Anthropology accepts it. We say that one, that person, that where the first human cognitive revolution, which is called the human cognitive revolution. The first human to have, for whatever reason, people would say that consciousness clicked the way it did. We say that was Adam, and we are all his offspring. Why is that a myth? Sure, I mean, if you want to think it's a myth, but why? That's no different to what the science is showing, what the data shows, what anthropology understands. Even if you want to call him man X, he was a man, was he not? In this case, that's how the Y chromosome comes. That's how we became a new species. It began with one man. यहाँ पे फंस जाते हैं. You know, there's in what movie is it where there's a quote, a dialogue, where the guy, where he says game अच्छी खेले हैं, आदमी गलत चुने. That's, I think, is it called Divanapan, or it's Akshay Khanna and I think Ajay Devgan, is it, where he says वैसे game अच्छी खेले हैं, बस आदमी गलत चुने. So that's the thing. So I'm afraid you is wrong, my friend. You is wrong. Right. So were brainy Homo sapiens any better than the various types of creation previously at the end? Homo sapiens are spectacularly greater. I mean, we are Homo sapiens. You don't see Denisovans thriving, or you don't see Heidelbergensis or Neanderthals or Homo habilis or Australopithecus or Homo ergaster, or you don't see any of them. Florensis. I mean, there's us, and we have reached unfathomable heights and continue to do so. I mean, we're embarking on multi-planetary residence and existence now. That's like, whoa, okay. I think the indomitable spirit of insan speaks for itself. Right, okay. I saw a Saudi Arabian. No, these things are not factual. You know, where people claim to have things from Adam alayhi salam, and they claim that Adam alayhi salam was somehow 60 cubic feet measurement tall, and all of this stuff. There's no evidence for this, and even people like Ibn Hajar and other people, when commenting on this hadith, say that these kind of ahadith are just from the Israeliyat most likely, and they're not authentic kind of teachings of Islam. And there's nothing to show that, because the evidence doesn't show anything like that. Okay. What's the question? Don't think YouTube likes the formatting. Allah. Every night is the new night, and Mufti is its Noor. उफ तुम्हारी इसी बात पे तो हम फिदा हैं जानू. This is the thing. This is Allah bless you. Allah bless you. No, I just did this today. It's not Thursday. It's not the new night. It is still Wednesday midweek, but I couldn't make the show yesterday, and I thought, why not? Huh? Sometimes it's as simple as that. The question is why, and the answer is why not? Somebody once responded to a philosophical question, a question on philosophy like that. The simple question was, the philosophy students, it was, why? Why? Just why? Question mark. Why not? Arguably, you see, one could extrapolate so much from the why. You know, the inquisitive, the existential, the ontological, But equally, one could extrapolate from the why not, Heidegger's sledgehammer, that, all of these things one could extrapolate. So, Amin, shukran, much love for the super chat. May Allah bless you. Any advice for young Muslims who want to take the deen more seriously? Oftentimes they get easily fooled by the Wahabi movement. Right. I would say, look, firstly, I would say that if you want to take the deen seriously, you must learn. You must learn Arabic, and you must familiarize yourself with the subject matter, the content of Islam. Don't worry, one step at a time. You don't need a grand plan in place. You don't need a kind of majestic strategy or something so detailed analysis, step by step of. Don't worry, just as Maulana Jalaluddin al-Rum said, that you just take a step and the path will appear. You just begin with Arabic, you get it out the way. Meanwhile, you start learning the basics. You can learn a bit about fiqh, you can learn a bit about tafsir, you learn, and things as you keep going a step, you will see the horizon more clearly. You will then know what to learn. I don't even need to tell you, you will start to know. See, it comes back to that thing. You will start to construct the knowledge for yourself. So, but Arabic to begin with is a necessity. So that is something which is a must. The other thing I would say is this may be difficult for you to realize and make a reality at that time, but go easy on yourself. Go easy. I would just say full stop. Not just even on yourself, but just go easy. That yassiru wa la tu'assiru. That this deen is one of ease. That go easy. You will, there's a great likelihood, may not, there's a likelihood you will live to regret much of the attitude and many of the things, your conduct and your what will be perhaps later in life read as misfortune during this period of zeal and energy that you have for Islam. Because during that early stage, people they fall into Puritanism, they fall into this scrupulosity, they isolate themselves from people, they burn bridges with people, they sometimes do irreparable damage that they can't come back from. So, and I've seen it. Just today, I was speaking, with a Patreon, and we were speaking about this in our one-to-one session. That because it's just there's so much damage that people do. Alhamdulillah, in these cases, it wasn't irreparable, but it was still often shameful and embarrassing, and still like, oh my God. I said, don't worry, it happens to the best of us. But it's a bit like measles, that the later it comes in life, the worse it is. These things, you want them over and done with at a younger age, so people could just ignore you as the follies of youth, and before you get over that phase, and you get more real. Right, so shukran, and may Allah make it easy, honestly, for each and all. A lot of people are really, people. I was just seeing the comments. People, it is amazing to see the passion that they do bring, the zeal and the energy, and and the love that they have for the faith. it's amazing, it's something so pure. But sometimes these things are misplaced, that this energy, this love is misplaced. And it just results sometimes in just, yeah, just unfruitful time being misspent. But yeah, yes, Allah. Right, guys, speaking about the spirit of insan, the indomitable spirit which refuses to give in, looking at the wonders around us in the world. Allah teaches us in the Quran that Siru fil ardi fanzuru. Why don't you travel about the earth and see things about you? فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. That why don't you take ibrah, take heed, take lessons, build on the knowledge, the information, the culture of those who went before you. Sure, don't take from their wrongdoings, their aggressions, their transgressions, the arrogance, the oppression and tyranny. Don't take those things. But look at all the wonderful things that they had. Allah. And here, I want to share some words on the hieroglyphs. Allah. Because this was something that really mesmerized humanity for centuries. That you had this really breathtaking civilization that built things that were just palpably superhuman. They just appeared superhuman. I mean, just looking at the pyramids, and the pyramids didn't look like how they look today. They were covered in limestone, and they would have been this glistening, bright marble-like white structure. All this was robbed during the race to steal antiquities, shall we say. So it was a breathtaking civilization built with such precision. It doesn't, and aligned with the celestial bodies in a way that, as Hermes had said, that as above, so below. As above in the heavens, so we find below that there is a harmony. And Graham Hancock has a lot of work, some amazing stuff on this. That's just on the general. I'm not aware of the hieroglyph stuff, but just on the whole civilization and wonders. So this writing that was the hieroglyphs, it has just mesmerized people for centuries on end. And people just couldn't seem to understand that what it was about. And this was so, and this code was eventually cracked. Okay. But before, for centuries, people first thought that these are just some religious symbols, that they may be part of an occult. So as in to maybe evoke spirits, and people were etching strange figurine-like symbols to kind of have some ritual to it that they didn't actually have. It wasn't a language. It was just symbolic of, it was like ritualistic. So many people thought this for centuries. But eventually this code is cracked. And who cracks the code? So these people we commonly are familiar with. You have Jean-Francois Champollion. Now, Champollion, who is from France, and slightly his senior from England, Thomas Young. So these are the names that you see rushing or brought to the forefront on cracking and deciphering this code. So that is in the early 19th century. Okay, so the 18 Thomas Young first, as we're going to see, and then building on that, Champollion also, and finally just cracking the code and then releasing his encyclopedia 2 years later. So he cracks it in 1822, and on the 14th of September. So that really made this whole session much more relevant to do as well. So, okay, now you also get with this some other names as well that people, so it's good to know. So you'll have Sylvestre de Sarcy. De Sarcy is also an Egyptologist. There was a huge craze, by the way, at this time for Egyptology, for Orientalism, especially Egyptology. And these are some of the people, they were heavily invested. They had studied the Middle Eastern languages. Many of them knew Arabic, they knew Coptic, they knew surrounding kind of languages. They spoke many European languages. They were like incredibly curious academics and researchers of the time. So Sylvestre de Sarcy is an Orientalist. He's a teacher of Champollion and also a teacher as well to Thomas Young, amongst many others as well. You have this name as well that does emerge, William J. Banks, who's and I'll tell you how this fits in a moment, but I'm just introducing some of these. He's a wealthy aristocrat who sets off at that time as well, plays a role, and I'll come to that. And then also Jean-Nicolas Huyot, who also plays an interesting role. So that's just some of the names, and it's a fascinating story. But so what we're going to do is pause this and just understand what was going on in general, and then we'll just come back to this. So the Europeans had been so fascinated, just as many of the people had, but nobody could understand what on earth are these things about, but they seem to be so awe-striking, breathtaking. So around the time of the French Revolution and the getting rid of King Louis XVI, so it's around that time that Napoleon, he rises through the ranks and he becomes the kind of general that leads France, really, especially from a military perspective with his conquests, and brings back this glory to France. But this is now the new Republic of France. So it's not this monarchy it's not meant to be this kind of old regime of tyranny and backwards thinking. So Napoleon Bonaparte, he has his expeditions through Europe and different places, but part of somewhere where he wants to go is Egypt, because of the sea routes and the canals and things like this. And obviously he'd heard of Egypt as well, and everybody had, and this whole mystique and the potential treasures and stuff there. But when he goes there, he doesn't just go on his own. He takes because he wants to present to the world that he's this new breath of fresh air for the world. France is this leading the world in culture. He takes with him approximately 150 researchers and academics and thinkers, scientists, that kind of a research group cohort. And he actually establishes a research center in Cairo. So this is Napoleon. Now, during this time, people are there stealing these antiques and the antiquities, and the breaking into them, and there's this huge, massive obsession that has swept several parts of Europe for Egyptology. They want to understand, and people are writing about it. There's journals, but we pause that for a moment. What was the backdrop that had, in the past, prior to this, spoken or taught us about these things? So one theory or common belief is that these hieroglyphs were symbols, that they were ideographs that represented concepts and ideas. Now, the Byzantine Christian encyclopedia in the 10th century arguably, or not arguably, it purports to make a claim that you have a person by the name of Horopolo from the 5th century, who was an Egyptian of the Egyptian ancient tradition, pagan kind of tradition, who was an expert in hieroglyphics, and he could read them. And he's eventually persecuted, and he becomes a Christian in the end, allegedly. And he writes this book. Okay, so he has this treatise of the hieroglyphs, which is then 500 years later transmitted in the Byzantine encyclopedia. And Horopolo, who the Europeans were giving much credence to his things through the Byzantine encyclopedia, which is called the Suda, and wherever they could find this purported text, I think it was called the Hieroglyphetica or something, but it was of Horopolo. They were giving this much preference, and he was saying, allegedly, because this is obviously wrong, but he was saying that these are ideographs, that each one of these symbols represents an idea. So this is what the Europeans were going with. Now, there was a belief at the time. So you have certain researchers, Kircher and others, who, leading up to this whole this spirit of Egyptology having erupted, leading up to that, had alleged and theorized that ancient Egyptian was related to later Coptic. So the Coptic language, they hypothesized, was related to the ancient pharaonic kind of speak and the ancient Egyptian. Now, this was a theory. There was no way to prove it. Some people, Kircher and other people, had argued this, hypothesized this. So you get several people taking an interest in Coptic as well. And that's something you're going to find that Thomas Young does a bit, but actually Champollion, he immerses himself into Coptic and he studies it extensively, and he studies Arabic as well, but Coptic, which was, very difficult to, because you didn't get many people. So Champollion mentions that he would often speak to himself in Coptic, that he would force himself to think in Coptic whilst in France. And he would always, in a enclosed room, talk to himself in Coptic until he made it second nature for him. Because who would you speak to? Because Coptic isn't one, it's definitely Arabic. You could still find other Orientalists that spoke Arabic in Europe. You could hardly find, very few people had knowledge of Coptic. So this was something he did immerse himself in. So there was this thing that maybe there was some connection, okay, that these people spoke a similar language. So, okay, you've got that going on. Now, right, okay, so let's pause for a moment. This is stuff that we all do know about, okay, and we are taught these things, we are told about them, but there's something we're often not told about. And this is something I wanted to share with us. And that is that we're not taught about the Muslim contribution to hieroglyphics being deciphered. Now, I want to introduce to you an amazing, legendary personality from Islam. His name was Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Wahshiyya al-Nibti. He was from Iraq. He lived during the 900s to you've got just over the 1000, so the 3rd, 4th century Islamic century, and you've got the 10th and 11th century of the Common Era. He was he lived close. He was born near to Kufa, and he grew up there. He claimed he was of Nabatean kind of origin, as in he had some lineage going back. I mean, this he affiliates himself to a Nibti, but he was an incredible polymath, a scholar of Islam. That was the basic. Everybody in that day and age that went on to any higher learning was a scholar of Islam. They'd studied all the understandings of hadith, Quran, fiqh, lugha, all that kind of stuff. He'd gone on to study, he was an alchemist, which is a kind of nascent proto chemistry, if you like. He was an expert in that, a historian, but also a linguist and a philologist, somebody who was studying language, and especially written texts. So he was interested in ancient languages that had died out. He authors a book known as Shawq al-Mustaham, and I'll bring that up in a moment, where he speaks of at least 89 civilizations that no longer exist in his days that had a written script, including the Indus Valley. He also cites in there about the Kurdish people and their alphabet, which no longer existed in his time. But he writes that they had this. Now, he mentions the hieroglyphics in his book, Shawq al-Mustaham, fi I'll bring up the full title. We have the thing here. So, and he also, by the way, has he had several other books as well. He has a book known as Al-Zira'a Al-Falah Al-Nibtiya, that Nabatean agriculture, which he speaks about was inherited by our civilizations that came after, and he writes all about this and how to optimize. And so he's speaking about agriculture, he's speaking about ancient civilizations, and especially his passion on languages, written languages that have now died out. So I'll enlarge this, and you can see that there. This is actually in a museum showing his works in his. Now, Ibn Wahshiyya does highlight previously that the hieroglyphs, they are ideographic, but they are also phonetic, that some of them do represent letters. He actually puts this in his book, Shawq al-Mustaham, fi ma'rifati rumuz al-aqlam. That's it. So aqlam, he uses the word qalam to mean a writing system. So, and this was his book, which you can see there, you've got certain pages from it. And the other one, Al-Falahat al-Nibtiya, which is to do with the Nabatean agriculture. So this is almost 800 years before Champollion. And you can see here from his book, there's certain codes. You can see that he's highlighting here. You've got from Sir Ruhi or Ilah, he's speaking about, he's got his rules, the God says, which he's speaking about, and different things. And you can see some of these do represent ideographs, and some of them are phonetic. And you'll see that, for example, here, this is from his book, Shawq al-Mustaham. You can see some of these symbols that he's got there. If you go through them, like for God, Allah, he's got on the top, from the left-hand page, top right-hand side, coming down, you've got a bunch of different things, a separation to the planets. You've got, if you can see there, which is the second one up, Zuhal. Those of you that know what Zuhal is Saturn, and Mushtari, which is Jupiter, Merikh is Mars, and then Shams, obviously the sun. And you've got Shams, and he goes on and different kind of, but you can see here there's some that are just phonetic. He's just got letters next to them. Like you can see on the other page, there's a Dad, there's a Qaf, It's just got certain letters. And he also includes Persian kind of, you could see a pa there. Okay. So that was the legend, Abu Bakr ibn Wahshiyah, and we're going to come back to him. But let's pause that for a moment. So that's who he was, somebody who spent his whole life deciphering what he could. He didn't crack the entire code, but he was very well. He also, one of the languages that he does write about is Demotic. So hieroglyphs were what you see on the pyramids, but you do have a kind of shorthand cursive script that the priests used, which was very ritualistic and just for the priest class, which was known as hieratics. And then there was one that later the public started to use, the common people, which became known as Demotic. And Demotic is from hieroglyphics, but it's like saying a cursive script, like almost like saying how you have capital letters and how you can join letters. In that kind of way, how you have hieroglyphs and you can kind of join them so you can write with much more speed for the common people, was Demotic. Demotic is something that, once again, Ibn Wahshiyah does speak about quite a bit in his book. So he puts all of this 800 years, the better part of a millennium, better part of 1,000 years, way before Champollion or Thomas Young or de Sarcy or any of these people arrive on the scene. Okay. And this is something that it's such a shame that it's so forgotten. And even Muslims, you can go to museums dedicated to Thomas Young, for example. You can go to, where he lived and where these people did things and and okay, fair enough, they were much closer to us, so it's easier. I get that. But surely a person could try to create certain things, an awareness that, wow, that this is something. Because why did Ibn Wahshiyah do this? Why? He didn't become rich doing this. He didn't. Many of the Egyptologists and in the race for antiquity were stealing ridiculous amount of gold, stealing a lot of antiquities. They were making money. They were doing it for a passion as well. That is true, and it did become an obsession and a passion. But people were also getting rich. Abu Bakr ibn Wahshiyah, he wasn't getting rich with any of this. It was a sheer passion and unbridled zeal to learn what the people before him had taught and expressed in this world. And he did it with no bridge. You see, that those civilizations had gone before him thousands of years before. But that was the indomitable spirit that he possessed. Allah. Now, let's put that there for a moment. Let's come back to the story. So how does this code get cracked? I mean, people for centuries and were trying and they'd given up. They're just hitting their head against a wall, can't get anywhere with it. They think what Horopolo had said, these symbols. How can you understand symbols? So the first, as we'd mentioned earlier, what Rumi had said, when you take a step, the path appears. So it is true that people did have a passion. They had a curiosity. And the first major clue or assistance comes to them during that journey of Napoleon. So let's go back to that. So Napoleon, in the late 1700s, he has gone off on these expeditions. He's come to Egypt. He's brought his armies. They're trying to set up these kind of sea bases. And whilst he's doing that, he's brought researchers. He's set up a research academic center in Cairo. Now, in the year 1799, whilst they are consolidating a fort, a fortress. They're trying to reset it up and use that as a military fortress as well in a small town known as Rashid, right in the north of Egypt. One of the workers uncovers, whilst digging up, they're finding a lot of stone that has been used for ancient buildings or old settlements near the Nile, the delta, and they are removing those, excavating them, and using them to consolidate this fortress that they're building, this military fortress thing. One of the workers comes across this stone, which is quite strange because it has this writing on it. But that's nothing strange. I mean, there's writing on many stones that they found, but this had writing in 3 different sections. See on the picture on the right, there's an example, and there's lines drawn through it. Now, this person thought this was strange, so he brings this to Napoleon's attention, who then has it sent to his research center, and it appears that the top third, so it's in 3/3, the top third is in hieroglyphs. The second third, which nobody understands, is in demotic, which once again nobody understands. The bottom is in ancient Greek. Now, this is interesting because, and you can see on the picture on the left, you've got in the first, starting from the left-hand side, a small picture of the entire stone, but then you've got extracts in the 3. This is just for an example. You've got the hieroglyphics, you've got in the middle the demotic speech and language, and then you've got ancient Greek. Now, the Europeans could understand Greek, especially the academics, and their knowledge of Latin and Greek was enough to decipher and to be able to read the classical Greek. Now, it turns out this was something from the reign of Ptolemy V, who was a king, which were the pharaohs from the much later kingdoms, the Ptolemaic kind of kingdom, who had some treaty going on, and he had this written, and at the time he'd written, obviously it was much larger, in these 3 languages. So the assumption was whatever the Greek thing is saying, because it's mentioning Ptolemy's agreement with the other dynasts and the settlements, the assumption is this is what the demotic and the hieroglyphs must also read. So straight away, people started copying it. They started artistic impressions, making casts of it, sending it back to Europe. And people are trying to figure this out. And they can't. They're kind of banging their head against a wall. They have some know-how sometimes of certain words. Nothing. It doesn't seem to be making any sense, because where do you even start? Because yes, first of all, okay, you've got these, but they're not perfect in shape. So there's many, for example, in the hieroglyphs that are missing, that are not in because the stone's broken. And it's not a word for word translation. And you don't even know which way it starts. Does it start left to right, right to left, up, down? How does it start? We don't even know. So how do you, it's an insurmountable task. It's impossible almost. But here it comes back to that human spirit, you see. So they didn't give up, though. They didn't give up. Now, and this was, as you could see, and by the way, this Madinatul Rashid, this stone, it is the stone Hajarul Rashid, or Piedra de la Rosetta, which became known as Rosetta Stone. Rosetta is Rashid in Arabic, because it was from the Madinatul Rashid, which you can see there in that northern part of Egypt. And that was the center that Napoleon had set up for research in Cairo. Now, right, so, okay. But how do we get a breakthrough in this? So, well, the breakthrough comes that some thinkers of the time and Egyptologists, and you had another name by Akerblad, who and some other people who were of the opinion, they thought that it's likely, you see, because some of them knew Chinese. Now they based in Chinese has ideographs as in its writing. So they figured that in Chinese, when they write the names of foreigners or kings, they sorry, foreigners especially, they use the terms phonetically. So this idea started to spread that the names of kings or foreign names may be used phonetically, but other things would otherwise be all symbolic and, ideographic. So there would be concepts and ideas as pictures. Now, so this idea is floating. Now, what happens is Thomas Young, the English researcher, and Thomas Young also has works on things like light and the the wave of light in physics, and he has something on the eye as well. So he's a bit of a polymath as well. Now he figures out that okay, he thinks if that's the case, he'd seen and other people had seen as well that there were certain images in the hieroglyphs that were drawn inside what they came to call them as cartouches, which was this kind of oval rectangular shape. Now, as you can see there in some of these images in the top right hand corner, you can see that there's this kind of oval rectangular shape. Within it, it's got some images. So Thomas Young thought, wait a minute, that only appears as a one-off. If this theory that names of kings or foreign people could be phonetic, then maybe that's a name of a king or a god that's in this cartouche, in this shape. So what he does is he scans the whole Greek thing, and in it he finds the name of Ptolemy. So he takes a look at the cartouche, where he finds in the hieroglyphs, and he comes to assume that this must mean Ptolemy. And he starts to separate, as you can see in this, the different pictures. So you can see in the right-hand side there, where you've got a picture of the bird, and you've got some symbol first, and he gets it more or less right. He's not entirely right, but he gets it more or less right. And he says, well, this must be phonetic. So the first must stand for a P, then it must be a T, then it must be, so Ptolemus. They come out with this Ptolemus. And he puts that out. Now, this is amazing. It's the first step of a breakthrough. Thomas Young has done this. But he does this quite it's into the 1800s. I think it may be something. So it's in the early 1800s. But once he does this, he's stuck because, okay, that is Ptolemus, which is Ptolemy, or Ptolemus, let's say, as it's spelt out in with the P. But how do you read the rest of the script? What do you do with that? And he tries, and nothing is coming up. He's trying to think, can't come up with anything. Stuck. Right. So now Champollion, what he does is he takes that knowledge from Thomas Young, takes this. Now, this has become a breakthrough. Wow. And everybody, they're super keen. They can't get enough of Egyptologist research. It's like crack cocaine to them, and they are junkies. So what he does is he starts to look at other things because they've got no other idea. So whilst this is happening, pause that. You've got this rich aristocrat, William Banks, who decides to go around the world and do what I guess that class of people did. And he wants to go to Egypt because that's where the craze is. And he goes there and he takes a team, and they're thinking, well, maybe we could take antiquities back and we could do stuff. And they come across the temple of Abu Simbel, which is in Aswan. Now, at the time, they don't know which pharaoh built the temple, but you've got these two big things, which is actually the temple of Ramses. But at the time, they don't know this. So when they're there, he has his kind of team copy out these inscriptions and these hieroglyphs. And one of the men working for him is Huyo, who copies out this cartouche that you can see here on the left-hand side, top left-hand side, and he sends it back to Champollion. Now, Champollion receives this, and he's taking a look at this image in this top left-hand side cartouche. And he knows, right? So this is interesting. They figured out from Ptolemus, they figured out the SS sign that you have right at the end. In the bottom of the cartouche, you've got this double, this kind of like a stick figure, which is the S kind of sound. Now, he sees in the beginning of the cartouche this kind of sun symbol. Now, here, Champollion's knowledge of Coptic helps him, because he thinks, well, in Coptic, they call the sun Re, and Coptic, they believed, was related to ancient Egyptian. So he says, Re sus, something's missing. What could it be? Here, he leaps to his understanding that Ramses, because they knew of the name of Ramses from the Bible. They heard of Ramses, and he can't believe, yes, he's got it. But this is not, they haven't cracked the code yet, you see. So they're almost, he's like, wow, I can't believe I've got Ramses. Whoa, I can't get enough. So during this time, he's now obsessed that let me try to find other cartouches. So at this time, you also had the obelisk with certain writings from it copied, and the obelisks were actually taken and given, and one of them ends up in Europe. It's sent here. So from these emerge these new cartouches that you have, these kind of oval rectangular inscriptions with the pharaoh name. So now they figured out that the names of the kings are in this, and they are being spelt phonetically. Okay, fine. So you've got Ptolemus, and you've got now Ramses, and he's figured out that this middle inscription must be an M, which wasn't exactly the case, but it was close. It was like an M and an S combined sound that the Egyptians had, but he was close because Ramses was correct. Now, Champollion is sent this cartouche that you can see at the bottom. Now, this is where the final mystery is unraveled. Now, here, the bird that you can see on the left-hand side is an ibis. Now, that bird, it was known, represented Thoth. Okay, the Egyptian godhead, or the Egyptian godhead, but also the famous, as we'll come to, pharaoh, but the godhead ibis represented Thoth. Okay, now he had the M and he had the double S, as you can see there. So Thoth Moses, and of course he'd heard of Thoth Moses as a pharaoh. They'd heard of, so there were certain, obviously, names of pharaohs that had come down through other traditions as well, through Greek letters, through other things, and these people were obsessed about anything and all things Egypt. So Thothmosis. So whilst Champollion is saying Thothmosis, Thoth the god, Moses, he realizes that Moses actually sounds very similar to the Coptic word Mise, which means to be born. And in that moment, he has the epiphany that, wait a minute, these are not phonetics. These are giving rise to words. That Thoth is born. Ra, the god Ra is born. Ramses, Thoth, Moses. He realized, damn, these are words. They're not just phonetic for kings. These spell out words. And he rushes into the room with his brother and he says, I've got it. And he faints with that. And it was on this date, 14th of September in 1822, that he finally cracks that code. And then when he does wake up from being unconscious after almost a week, what he does is he starts going through all the demotic and starting to look out for words that now sound similar to Coptic, because he was very fluent in Coptic. And this is where, and he starts to put together these different hieroglyphs. And within the next 2 years, he releases an encyclopedia of hieroglyphs. But something interesting here, because the whole story hasn't quite finished, is Champollion refuses to give any credit to Thomas Young, even though Thomas Young's first breakthrough is what led to his breakthrough. But he refuses to acknowledge. And de Sacy, who was the teacher of both of them, had a fallout with Champollion, and he had actually told, and this is still in, you can find this, that he had told Thomas Young that you have to beware of Champollion because he will take your research from you and never credit you for it. He will always attribute it to himself. So his own teacher, de Sacy, was saying this, although later on they do have a patch up. But this was something very well known, and it does happen. So when Champollion releases his writing in 1822, announcing this, he gives zero credit to Thomas Young. So what Thomas Young does in the following year is releases an article and circulates it, in which he says that this was my finding in how he titles it, in how he cracked the first step of the code, which was then, and he writes in the title, which was then later expanded by Jean-Francois Champollion. So he puts that in his title that, hey, I was the first person. I know he's not going to give me any credit. So, okay, why is that important? Well, here comes the final piece. You see, that is important because, ladies and gentlemen, I'll have you know that in 1806, Joseph Hammer, a man by the name, an Egyptologist and a European researcher and academic, had translated in 1806 into English the works of none other than Abu Bakr ibn Wahshiyya. His book شوق المستهام في معرفة رموز الأقلام, which spoke on the hieroglyphs and spoke on them being symbolic, being ideographs, but also phonetic, was translated to English by Joseph Hammer in 1806 when all of this research was going on. Now, Champollion, it is almost very difficult, almost impossible to believe that somebody who was reading up on every single thing that was related to Egypt did not come across this in 1806 or 1807 or 1808 or 1810. The fact that he did not come across this book is incredibly unlikely. He most certainly did come across this book, and it did feed into what became his ultimate breakthrough, because it's just too conveniently placed that, sure, because it got translated into English and then later on it would have got into French as well, and it would have circulated and got out, and definitely within a decade easily. But Champollion was not one to credit people. He did not even credit his contemporary, Thomas Young. He did not even credit his own teacher, Desasi, let alone crediting a Muslim from 800 years ago, Abu Bakr ibn Wahshiyya al-Nibti. That was never going to happen. But it just goes to show that this journey that as a collective humans undertook to decipher the indecipherable, to crack this next to impossible code, yet that flame stayed alive within the hearts. And eventually, on what would have been now yesterday, we're talking 200 years ago, on that very day, the code was finally cracked, which was an accomplishment for humans as a whole. This journey of ours, this indomitable spirit, and that much of this journey, or at least an undeniable portion of that success, finds itself nested and anchored in with a man 800 years before from Iraq, Abu Bakr Ahmad ibn Ali ibn Wahshi al-Nibti, a great Muslim scholar who contributed in our understanding today. Allahu Akbar. Honestly, that is something, it is just so wow. And I really wish and I want everybody to celebrate that as well. Like, learn, if you do learn about it, learn about, and this is, it's all, I mean, everything, it's all part of our legacy, a human legacy, whether it's Champollion or Thomas Young, but also Ibn Wahshiyya, who'd beat them hundreds and hundreds of years before. I mean, wow. what a dawn, huh? What a dawn. I really want to share that with you guys. I hope it's been of some help. So shukran. Right. All right. So guys, right now somebody said what stopped the passion of curiosity for that Muslim scholars once had. Yes, a fascinating and a very important question. I feel it was definitely. I mean, there's going to be multiple factors. Okay, there's that poem where he says, "Kuch shahar de log vi zalim san, kuch sanu maranda shok vi si." There's it's a bit like that. That he says it's in part the people of the town were tyrants, and in part I too also had a death wish. So I think Muslims, in part, there's always some responsibility that people would have to be. Choices that were not as wise, and no longer investing in certain cultural elements, no longer sparking that curiosity, allowing that to die a death, not keeping up to date with the new technological revolutions, falling into bickering and just politics that was just wretched politics naturally. But also, on the other hand, the global economy had shifted with the Americas, and astronomical amounts of gold and silver being brought back into Europe, and Europe taking upon themselves this renaissance, which, by the way, was lit by the Muslim torch because of Andalus, which brought that enlightenment to them. And they used it to clear away the cobwebs of their own superstition, which took them hundreds and hundreds of years. But it did eventually do that for them. And with the money and the new enlightenment came the Industrial Revolution. And that, alongside that, also was the tyrannic, oppressive colonialism of the world, where they just went around and just raped the resources of these other countries. And one of the things is, what's his name? Takur. What's his name? Takur. The famous. But there's a clip of his. I'll share it on my story, Instagram story. But where he's speaking about this whole thing of colonialism, and he says that you can't deny. I mean, he's saying, look, we're not bitter about it. It is what it is, and it was what it was. But he says that Indians are a forgiving and forgetting people, but he says that they should forgive but not forget. And it's interesting that in all English schools, not a single sentence of colonial history is taught. But why not? Because this was real. And he says it's undeniable that the British came to a country that was one of the richest countries in the world at that time. It contributed to, I believe, a third of global, or near a third of global economy was India. And by the time they left it, it was one of the poorest countries on earth. How can that? I mean, the Queen's, the crown, the Kohinoor, as Nadir Shah, I believe, or Timur, sorry, no, who's it? Nadir Shah or Timur, who named it Kohinoor. But I think Nadir Shah. And so, which is in her crown. And it's not about, this isn't about giving back or taking back, but sure. But the point is that it's an undeniable fact that the country was taken from its height and brought down, impoverished to the ground, raised to the ground, and then that wealth was used to build the new empire, or to fund the empire, and to really, so yeah, these things. So colonialism was definitely um, an undeniable factor in the stagnation, or whether we want to say demise, of that Muslim intellectual curiosity. Because when you're just being killed, you haven't got time to philosophize. When you're worried about how will your children eat their food, you haven't got time to worry about, I wonder whether why Venus is in retrograde rotations, or why, you don't, you're more concerned about survival, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So yeah. Right. Should I, you know what, I'll share, should I take on one guest? Let's see, what time is it? Right. Actually, it is quite, let's go on. I'll share one clip, one link. Omar Sultan, much love, shukran for the super chat. Oh, that's it, Shashi, that's it. That's it, Shashi Tharoor, Shashi Tharoor is who I'm talking about. That's the one. Sorry, I got his name all messed up. Okay, I've shared the link. And yeah, but this isn't, you see, I think sometimes what happens is Muslims can become, and this happens with other people as well, but you see it unfortunately with certain Muslims, they can fall into a victimhood mentality. Listen to me, if given the choice, always adopt the mindset of the victor. Always choose victor over victim. Always see the positivity, see the light. Don't dwell on the darkness. It is what it is, but you have to, some people get caught, oh my God, we were in a golden age, we were like this, we were like this, we were like this. First of all, you were not anything. Okay. As the poet says, La durra durr imri'in yutri ra'sahu, yutri awailahu, wa yutriqu ra'sahu in sa'altahu mahu. That there's no point, that person, he's not worth anything, who, if he boasts about the awa'il, yutri awailahu, those who is this ancestral legacy. But if you ask him, okay, sure, they were, they were great people, that they were legends, okay, but what about you? What are you? And then he hangs his head in shame. that, as Allama Iqbal said, "Wo to tumhare aaba the, magar tum kya ho?" Those were your forefathers, but what are you? Haath pe haath dhare, muntazire farda. What are you waiting for? Like, you just like, sure, they were, even if they were your ancestors, but what are you? So that's the always embrace a positivity. Okay, these things are always for lessons and to find inspiration. That, so you can, from these stories and from history, you can take ibrah, can take heed. These things can motivate you to once again get going yourself. Okay, that, yeah, life is tough, man. It can be difficult, but it can be sweet and beautiful, and it can be whatever you see. We can't change world events, we can't change history, but what we can do is, we can't change the past, but what we can do is change how we look at things, change our perspective. That there's a poem that what is that? Is that actor, actually? I've forgotten his name. But he says in the poem, "Disha badlo to kinare badal jate." And if you change the direction, disha, Hindi word for direction. He says, if you change the word, change the direction, to kinare badal jate. That, that, so in the thing, he has that nazar badlo to nizare badal jate, and disha badlo to kinare badal jate. That if you change the direction, then the coast or the shore that you're going to changes. So yeah, I did share that. Mufti, you are underrated. Hi. Should be a common face of Islam in the West. Let's just be ourselves for now. Let's just be ourselves. Rest, is there, right? Some of these are detailed questions. Mufti, is there a MindTrap tomorrow? There isn't one tomorrow, but I'm hoping I may get one in on Sunday night. Okay, inshallah, that should be interesting. This one more about our guest's journey to Islam. The hurdles that lay in the way to Islam, his journey through Islam, his nourishment of the soul with psychedelics, how that has reinforced faith, and yeah, just discussions around that. What could be greater than that, huh? DMT and the soul. Allah. This is the path I'm telling you, people. These psychedelics, this path of consciousness, it is the portal to God in our day and age. Allah. And it is very advanced, an advanced healing for both the soul and the physical existence here. But it is an intense and overwhelming healing, but it is a healing of unparalleled kinds. So, yeah. So I look forward to that. Mushrooms to the soul. Yeah, of course. MindTrap with some. Yeah, look, I'm more than open to and more than welcoming for MindTraps with different people. If you have, just my criteria is simple. Two things: that they are interesting and they are interested. So that they are interesting in what they have to speak about, or whatever their research is or area of interest, and that they are interested in participating. So if that works, that's excellent. Really, you just need those two things, really. Right, I think this will have to cover another day, that Umayyad Caliphate versus Abbasid Caliphate, who did more for Islam. It's very fascinating. Naturally, the golden age of Islam is seen with the Abbasid. I guess the more intellectual golden age is seen with the Abbasid, the whole Baytul Hikmah and movement. And I think that's undeniable. But the expansion of Islam really finds itself in the Umayyad dynasty. And so, we're not, when you look at how far Islam spread within the first 100 years of Islam, and you look at the world map today, it's, or even let's say you go during the Bani Umayyad time. And so even if we're looking at 120, 130 years of Islam, and so this first 120 odd years, and you look at the world map today, I mean, obviously Muslims are far more today. I don't just mean in number and reproduction, but in kind of geographical expression. So that's true. But when you look at it, a substantial amount, it's not that similar, given there's 1,300 years to come after that. But in the first 100 years, they cover pretty much all of the Middle East, and most of the definitely, okay, not the Byzantine part, as in that part of Turkey, but the surrounding parts, and the Middle East and Iraq, Iran, that kind of thing. Going further, they'd reached Sindh, which is modern day Pakistan. There'd been some contact with other parts of India, Dabul and other places, and they had North Africa was Muslim, the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, which okay isn't part now, but that was Muslim, the Balearic Islands, and so you've got a certain amount that is already like, wow, okay, that's, you're just talking the first century of Islam. So I think, yeah, people are quick to judge Bani Umayyah because of the atrocities, but they unquestionably, you can't, credit where credit is due. And people can be an amalgamation of good and bad. They don't have to be sheer evil incarnate. They can be messed up, but they can also be, do great accomplishments as well. So it is true that they did have this about them. Yeah. So, but we can speak on that in another day. Mushrooms to the soul. Faha. I've spoken of this before. I do feel that the forbidden fruit, which the Quran doesn't mention what the forbidden fruit was, but the fruit that leads to greater self-awareness, and self-awareness, because the Quran mentions them becoming more self-aware, is linked to a greater level of consciousness. And this tree of this fruit is also called the tree of khuld, of immortality, or in some traditions as the tree of knowledge, as Ibn Abbas said. Shajaratul khuld was the Shajaratul ilm that gave this knowledge. This, I do feel that was, whatever it was, I don't know, obviously none of us know, but whatever it was, I incline and find myself in line with those who feel that whatever it was psychedelic. It was a psychedelic fruit, if we want to use the word fruit metaphorically. So whether it was mushrooms, whether it was DMT, whether it was whatever it was, but the consumed was of, it was an entheogen, is the word that people of the path use. Okay, entheogen, that which connects us to God. Psychedelics are the word I'm using for for the commoners. Now since I started rolling with King Charles III, we have a language of our own. The us 0.1%ers of the world. Let me just check if Charles is awake. I'll wake him up for tahajjud now. The peasants, for the peasants out there, bichare peasants, yeah. It keeps us up, it keeps us awake at night. The fikr and the gham and the worry about the gham and the hum of the peasants. Isn't that right, Charlie boy? Charlie. Guys, it's been awesome. You know what? I really enjoyed this session. I enjoyed you guys seriously coming on, sharing, just viewing. So much love to you. May Allah keep you always smiling, always blessed. Ameen. And may He grant ease to anyone that is suffering anywhere. There are a lot of people, especially the Pakistan floods. I mean, it is a humanitarian crisis of just astronomical proportions, and yet it's not received any of the attention that anything would have. That a simple flood in any European town would have received. It just really shows. But yeah, once again, we make dua. We always try never to ever allow yourself to become bitter. Life's too short to be bitter. Even when you are met with disappointment, like you see things like that the world isn't helping, it's disappointing, but khair, hasbunallah. Always keep positive. You must at all times. That's the message of that spirit, the indomitable spirit. So people, with that, asta'dhinukum, I'll take your leave. Those of you that want to reach out to me, if you're not already, by the way, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Do so. Yeah, that's the minimum. Yeah, spread the love. Subscribe, click the notification thing. So every time I do release a clip, every day we try to, and some great artwork coming through by Nora. Absolute epic artwork. May Allah keep you blessed. Shukran, Nora, and all the AI that is helping. Allahu Akbar. Right. So if you're not already subscribed, do subscribe. Do spread the love. If you want to connect with me, Instagram's a great place. Facebook you can, but Instagram, if you want to send me a quick message, you're more than welcome. If you're interested in having one-to-one perspective sessions with me, you can go to patreon.com/MALM, and you can select it from the tiers. It's tier 2. Okay, you can select a one-to-one, and it shows you how to. It does have a charge, which is around £100 approximately, and so it does it in dollars, so it's slightly different. But and it'll show you how to book yourself in. But you can also, from Patreon, the other tiers, you can subscribe just to the Mindscape, which is the Discord server, and be a part of that chat and stuff as well. Guys, take very good care of yourselves. May Allah keep you all blessed and smiling. Wassalamu alaikum wa khuda hafiz.